I live in Groton. I did on the brow of a hill that was very high, that looked over a fabulous view. And I like views. And I used to go out there and look to the north. I saw Mount Monadnock from my house. Then I would see Wachusett to the west. To the south, I saw Boylston, a blinking red light that I assume was to keep airplanes from flying into the wires. And then one night, my wife and I were sitting in our kitchen at the east end of the house, and we were watching television because it was New Year's Eve, and we were watching fireworks on television until we realized the same fireworks were right out our window, but 30 miles away. That was a wonderful surprise. And then I would go out there because I had a study on the second floor that, with a deck that gave me a view of all of this landscape. And as the darkness fell, I would see lights come on in the woods, roads with car headlights on them, all except one area. And the density of settlement was certainly moving into Groton wherever it legally could. But there was one dark area with no light. And that was then time for me to go and tell a bedtime story to my youngest daughter, which I would do. And as I walked down to her room, I would think, what will the story be tonight? And I began to fantasize about this dark area that I'd never been in, and I really didn't ever want to go because I enjoyed the fantasy of what might be there. And she sort of enjoyed it too. And so night after night after night, I told bedtime story to this very sprightly 4-year-old bundle of energy. How can I calm her down and whatever? And I don't want to calm you down, put you to sleep, but that was my objective. So I became very fond of my fantasies about this land. And then I heard about the owner wanting to sell it, wanted to sell all of it because they'd made a bad investment. They made cement railroad ties that were breaking up, and they were losing a huge amount of money. It was the Lone Star Cement Company, the largest cement company in the world. So I yacked wherever I could, where can we get the money to buy this property? And I talked to their lawyers in Boston who said, oh, we'd love it to go to a conservation society. But I couldn't find any money. They wanted $4 million for it. Finally, and I also read a statement by the head of Audubon at that time. It was the 100th anniversary, Jerry Bertram. And he was saying, we have a sanctuary within 20 minutes of every school child in Massachusetts except one. And it was this area. So I called him up and said, I've got your sanctuary site. Great, he said. And he would send people out. And we made a date, and they came, and I called my friend Bob Pine, who runs, what's the name of the company? Pine and Swallow. He has a degree in geology, a degree in planning, design, a very capable guy. And that part I don't have in common with him, but we have the same values. And I said, Bob, can you make me a map of the whole area showing the way the land works, the contours, all of the different things that happened since the ice melted that covered all of this land long ago? Oh yeah, and he did. And on the day that the Audubon people came out to appraise the land, he had a map for each person, and we had brown bag lunch on a rock outcropping. A wonderful day. And then went back to our cars, and they huddled. And we sat in our car and we waited for them to come out. Finally the door opened, and the good news: we will go back and tell Jerry that we recommend acquisition of this property. That was all good. What I didn't know was that Audubon didn't have any money. I never asked. So my friend who provided the maps said to me, you know, there are two guys in town with an idea for developments that they are familiar with doing, financing and so forth, but they're afraid of you and your friends, your conservation friends. They don't want to fight at town hall against Marion Stoddard, who is the pinnacle of conservation, and me. I'm not so pinnacle, but he knew me. And Bob said, why don't you call him? I said, what a fabulous idea. Conservation cooperating with developers. And that's what we did. I called Bob, and he was at first worried. And I said, don't worry, Bob. I have great respect for him as a businessman. His companies have maintained our septic tank for years. Exactly when they said they would. Very conscientious, neat job, good workers, and he had a good reputation. So that happened, and then he said, I said, why don't we kind of partner on this? Because I want the land, no good to you, for Mass Audubon. And you get the part for your big box store right on 119, which turns out to be Shaw's Supermarket. That's what he knew how to do. All looked good. The other land up the hill on the slope above Shaw Supermarket, that could be housing. And he had another developer to work with there. So we all worked together, had a town meeting, had a plan for the whole tract of land, and what part Audubon would get and what part would go for Shaw. We didn't have the name of the market, but for the large retail store, and then where the housing would go on the side of the hill. It passed town meeting unanimously. I always go to town meeting. Never heard of a unanimous vote. And it was smooth going up to that point. It took many years before we finally got there. As it was referred to, housing market collapsed. The people were not investing in houses. And so the guy who was putting up the housing market, he was putting up the parking lot area. And I don't know how much between here and Bob Lacombe we're going to divide. Audubon was going to cost nothing. They were going to get the land for free because we were partners, and it was important for them to have us as allies. Well, they wouldn't have gotten any of it if it hadn't been for the participation of Audubon. But Audubon wouldn't have gotten anything if it hadn't been for the participation of the two developers. It was a wonderful combination. But it took time. I've been waiting and waiting. I used to go out on the deck of our house that looked out over all of this land that went from Monadnock all the way around. And then I'd go down and tell a story to my 4-year-old daughter. She's now 54. But it worked. It happened. And don't get discouraged. It's a wonderful thing to do. I can't tell you the years that it's added to my life to live. I'm 89, I'll be 90 in a few weeks. The motivation to stay alive and to experience all of this, the whole joy of the experience is just fabulous. So, that's my story. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I think now probably you ought to all get up and walk around.